I'm Brian Johnson. I'm the category manager for OTW. I'm basically responsible for all the merchandising responsibilities to deal with OTW. After that, work with my counterpart Ollie with the marketing, and then bring it to the sales crew and present it, bring it out to market. So there's three guys in particular, hence the three shoes. So the Prescott that we worked on is with a guy named Sagan Lockhart. I'm sure you've heard the name. He's pretty well known on his own tip for the whole photography thing and his associations with Odd Future. I think he represents definitely a very specific part of LA youth culture and street culture. Obviously has a huge tie into that. He wanted something like ultra classic. I mean, he grew up, he's pretty heavily into the skating thing, and he grew up just wearing classic, authentic, so he chose the Prescott because that silhouette is pretty much the same. There's a liner material that's actually it's almost like a buck check or like a scaled up gingham pattern, and he had actually come in and he had brought this hat that he'd been wearing since he's like, I've been wearing this since I was really young, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, a couple of years ago, right? But it was actually pretty close to that hat, so it was kind of a combination of like him growing up on Vans, him skating in Vans, and then also like this other actual piece of his own personal memories sort of just tied into that. There's another guy, Ollie, who's actually store manager over at Undefeated on La Brea. So obviously day in, day out, he's on that front line seeing like the best of the best, seeing what these kids want. He's got a very keen insight into what's going on trend-wise there. The silhouette that he chose, the Tesella, is probably our most forward that we've got out there. It actually debuted this season as well. So if you look at it, it's obviously like a lifestyle runner influence, so not necessarily functional, but obviously the cues are there. It's got a hand-woven side portion that actually references back. The woven squares actually on there are the same size, that 15 millimeter, as our classic checkerboard on the slip-on. So that's like the ultra new tying back to the old, and you'll see like little stars, red, white, and blue, like obviously like very athletic influence there too. And the third guy actually, Jordan, he worked on the Bedford with us. With Jordan, I think he came up skating quite a bit too, so obviously the Bedfords, you'll see that half cab tie back as well. We had been working on a couple of rounds of shoes with him, and he's a young guy, so like I was just like, after we finish working on these cabs with the designer, do you want to go upstairs and meet the rest of the designers? He's like, oh yeah, tight, let's do it. He goes upstairs, and apparently he knows more of the designers upstairs in my building than I do. The tagline for the category is modern design meets the original. I think when you look at the silhouettes, some of them have very distinct ties back to our classic silhouettes, but it's that classics with a twist, and it's us modernizing and updating. A lot of the inspirations that these guys actually took was, a lot of early 90s retro sport influences, which I think is really prevalent, not just in the US, but particularly in LA. So you'll see a lot of that actually come through in smaller pieces and details of the colorways themselves. And then I think you'll see that navy sort of tying back through the entire package as well, sort of that one color tie back as well. When we look at them as a collective group, and that was the idea, is they really represent, I think, everything that's going on in LA street culture. Through each one of those guys, they're sort of representing a different point of it. Copenhagen is actually the next one that we're already working on. So there's 3 guys in Copenhagen that I think have some pretty significant associations with street culture. Like, if you ever had the chance to visit Copenhagen, or like if you study up on a lot of the brands and people that are coming out of there, I'm pretty sure that just based on like the early samples and CADs that we've been working on, it should represent quite well.